Chapter 1. The 11th Time's the Charm. The spring air felt unusually heavy as we made our way to the Civil Affairs Bureau, attempt number 11 in 7 years. I stole a glance at Su Qinshui's profile, searching for any sign that today might be different. My heart already knew it wouldn't be. Like a well-rehearsed play, the scene unfolded exactly as it had 10 times before. Just steps from the bureau's entrance, Su Qinshui stopped, her face transforming with that familiar mix of guilt and defiance. The same excuse hung in the air between us. Her first love needed her care. This time, something inside me cracked. If his illness never improves, I heard myself ask, my voice barely steady, will you never marry me? What exactly am I to you? Her reaction was explosive. I made a lifetime promise to care for him, she snapped, eyes flashing. Why can't you stop being so selfish? 7 years we've been together. What's so important about a piece of paper? Around us, life moved in cruel contrast. Young couples walked hand in hand. Families chased giggling toddlers. Elderly pairs supported each other with gentle touches, their happiness like daggers to my heart. Each smile seemed to mock me. See? She doesn't love you, never has. That's why she leaves you standing here, again and again. I retreated to a quiet corner, no longer able to maintain composure. 7 years. The weight of it crushed my chest. How many 7-year chapters does one life contain? And I had wasted one of mine on nothing but beautiful lies. Here I stood in my carefully chosen suit, the most pitiful figure on these bustling streets. Big brother, why are you crying? A small voice cut through my misery. A little girl in a puffy princess dress held out a piece of candy, her innocent smile a mirror of another memory, the day I first met Su Qinshui. Back then, my family had hit rock bottom, my mother critically ill. I was hiding just like this, tears just as bitter, when Su Qinshui appeared with candy and words that changed my life. The path lies beneath your feet. Wherever you walk, that's where it leads. That candy had tasted like hope. When my family's fortunes miraculously turned around, I believed Su Qinshui was my destiny, my lucky star. Now, taking the child's offered sweet with trembling fingers, I found only bitterness, a perfect metaphor for what Su Qinshui had always been. Poison wrapped in sugar. I managed a weak smile for the little girl. She skipped away, unknowingly carrying a piece of my shattered heart with her. As I finally gathered myself to leave, my phone screen lit up. A message from Yang Xiaoji. Yang Xiaoji's social media post felt like a knife to my chest. With you here, I don't feel the pain, he wrote beneath a photo of Su Qinshui tenderly feeding him. Such a simple scene, yet it shattered what remained of my composure. The intimacy was undeniable. They truly were in love. I closed my phone with trembling fingers and stumbled toward the nearest bar. Alcohol had never been my companion these past years. Su Qinshui despised the smell of it, and I had always been careful to live my life according to her preferences. Every aspect of my existence had been calibrated to her needs. Yet here she was, caring so deeply for another. The irony wasn't lost on me as I ordered drink after drink, each burning shot doing little to numb the ache in my chest. My heart, surprisingly, felt eerily calm. Through the haze of alcohol, I lifted my phone above my head, opening the camera. The face that stared back at me was a stranger's, flushed cheeks, unfocused eyes still swollen from crying. A perfect portrait of wretchedness. Without hesitation, I captured the moment and posted it with a simple caption. To my 7 years. The responses flooded in immediately. Marriage license didn't work out? Did sister-in-law leave you again? Don't worry, brother's here. I'm coming right over. Concerned messages from friends who'd watched this drama unfold too many times. But among them, her message stood out like a thorn. What madness are you up to outside? Are you playing pitiful just to make everyone criticize me? No concern about my drinking. No gentle reminder to take care. Just anger and accusations about making her look bad. Su Qinshui's words hit me harder than the alcohol, pushing my mood to new depths. This wasn't the first time she'd scolded me, but each instance carved deeper wounds than the last. Chapter 2. It had become a pattern. Whenever Yang Xiaoji had an episode, Su Qinshui would direct her frustration at me. Perhaps it wasn't even anger. Maybe she simply couldn't bear to see me happy while he suffered. But I owed him nothing. When Su Qinshui and I first got together, I knew about her white moonlight, her cherished first love. I had even embraced her with understanding, promising to treat her well. Yet that white moonlight had become an invisible wall between us, materializing whenever we grew too close. Once, I gathered my courage and told her that if she truly couldn't let go, if she wanted to stay by his side, I would step aside. I had my pride. I refused to be the other woman. But my words only ignited her fury. "What do you take me for?" she had demanded, pointing an accusatory finger. "Xiaoji and I are just friends. He's unwell. What's wrong with me caring for him? Don't you have friends? Or does your suspicious mind see everything as dirty? What grown man is as petty as you?" Despite my best efforts to never interfere with Yang Xiaoji, in Su Qinshui's eyes, I remained petty and small-minded. I raised my glass again, swallowing another drink mixed with silent tears. As the alcohol took hold, my thoughts began to blur, rising and falling like waves. Memories faded into the background, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, like I finally belonged to myself again. The neon lights of the bar flickered around me, witnesses to my liberation through despair. For the first time in 7 years, I didn't return home. Instead, I let the night sweep me away, drinking, laughing too loudly with friends, eventually collapsing in an anonymous hotel room. By noon the next day, my phone was vibrating with Su Qinshui's relentless calls. "Are you done making a scene, Zhou Ding?" Her voice cut through my hangover like a blade. All this drama just because we didn't get our marriage certificate? Was staying out all night really necessary? She continued without pause, her familiar refrain washing over me. "I've told you countless times. Xiaoji and I are just friends. He's sick, and his family is so far away. If I don't care for him, who will? Can't you show even a little sympathy?" My head throbbed, her words buzzing like an angry mosquito. Something had shifted inside me. Where her scolding would once have sparked immediate guilt, now I felt only irritation. My silence must have alarmed her. Her voice suddenly softened, taking on that coquettish tone she used when she needed to smooth things over. "I was wrong to leave you yesterday. Don't be angry with me. How about dinner and a movie tonight? My treat?" "Okay," I mumbled, the word tasting bitter. These simple pleasures, dinner, movies, an ordinary evening together, should have been natural parts of our relationship. Instead, they were Su Qinshui's currency of apology, doled out only after she'd hurt me. "Perfect! I'll pick you up tonight." Her voice brightened with victory before the line went dead. I straightened my rumpled clothes and headed to work. The morning was lost, but afternoons wait for no one's heartbreak. That's the cruel reality of adulthood. All emotions must be packed away during business hours because life demands it. At the office, I plastered on my professional smile. My colleagues mercifully avoided mentioning yesterday's social media drama. My boss, however, called me into his office. "The company needs someone to handle our overseas business," he began, studying me carefully. "Xiao Zhou, I've always had high hopes for you. A man can't fail in both love and career." Chapter 3. In the past, I would have immediately declined, protesting that Qin Shuwen needed me, that leaving would destroy any hope for us. But today, I simply accepted the documents he offered, responding with unexpected calm. "I'm willing to comply with the company's arrangements." 7 years. While my colleagues climbed the corporate ladder, I remained frozen in place, neither advancing nor retreating, all because of a woman. I could see the surprise in my boss's eyes as he asked, "What about Qin Shuwen?" His reaction revealed he'd prepared for days of persuasion, not immediate acceptance. I met his gaze steadily. "I can make my own decisions now. You're right. A man can't reach middle age with nothing to his name." My boss's approving pat on my shoulder felt like a benediction. I exhaled deeply, finally seeing clearly. 7 years of chasing Su Qinshui had yielded nothing but heartbreak. It was always me giving, her taking. But work was different. Work was pure mathematics. Effort in, results out. No games, no hidden agendas. The overseas assignment preparations consumed my day, a welcome distraction from thoughts of Su Qinshui. As dusk settled over the office and the last keyboard clicks faded away, Xiaoli appeared by my desk. "Brother Joe," she said hesitantly, "your girlfriend's been waiting outside for ages. Aren't you going to see her?" I blinked, genuinely confused. Xiaoli's surprised chuckle filled the empty office. "Everyone's been talking about it. We thought you were giving her the cold shoulder." She gathered her things, leaving me with a meaningful look. At the window, I finally checked my phone. Su Qinshui's messages evolved from impatience to pleading. "I know I was wrong. I booked a really nice restaurant. Don't be angry, okay?" The childish coaxing sparked a bitter laugh. Human nature really is fickle. When I'd been the one sending desperate messages, she'd found me suffocating. Now that I was distant, she couldn't stop pursuing. From my vantage point, I could see her pacing below, waving excitedly when she spotted me, like someone calling a beloved pet. The thought left a sour taste in my mouth. Still, it was dinner time, and more importantly, time to end this 7-year charade. "Ding Yu!" She launched herself at me the moment I emerged, clutching a bouquet of roses behind her back. Those doe-like eyes that once melted my heart now only irritated me. I stepped back, breaking her embrace. "Let's go," I muttered, retreating to the back seat, a deliberate distance that seemed to surprise her. She stood frozen for a moment, uncharacteristically accepting my coldness. "Ding Yu, aren't the flowers beautiful?" Her voice was unnaturally bright. "Didn't you always want us to be like a normal couple?" Watching her present the roses like some precious offering made me want to laugh. Of all flowers, she'd chosen roses, Yang Xiaoji's favorite, not mine. She couldn't even remember this simple detail about me, yet here she was, playing at sincerity. The drive was filled with her desperate attempts at conversation. I kept my gaze fixed on the passing city lights, responding with detached politeness, until she finally lapsed into silence, focusing on navigating through traffic. Our destination was one of those trendy restaurants designed for social media. All style, little substance. As we stepped out, other couples drifted past, lost in their own worlds. Su Qinshui frowned, suddenly grabbing my arm and linking it with hers, marking her territory, as always. Chapter 4. Her grip on my arm tightened possessively as we entered the restaurant, her smile brittle as glass. I swallowed my displeasure, letting her lead the way. Sensing my unusual detachment, Su Qinshui's enthusiasm became almost manic. "Ding Yu, look!" She gestured excitedly. "That pavilion is perfect for couples' photos. And look at how the sunset catches the clouds. And over there," she continued, "that arch bridge where Xiaoji loves to listen to the flowing water." She caught herself too late, hand flying to her mouth. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." I kept my face carefully blank, though my heart clenched. Even now I tried to be understanding, tried not to hold it against her that our last meal together would be peppered with memories of him. The irony was exquisite in its cruelty. Su Qinshui fell into an uncomfortable silence as we reached our table. She ordered dish after dish, all Yang Xiaoji's favorites, I noted with bitter amusement. 7 years had taught me his preferences as well as my own. Every choice revealed where her heart truly lived. The old saying rang true: what occupies your heart shows in everything you do. For the first time, I didn't object to the menu. My silence clearly unsettled her. "Is there anything else you'd like to add?" she asked, studying my face. I shook my head. How pathetic I'd been, slowly learning to accept foods I disliked just to please her. After the server left, Su Qinshui's face flushed crimson. Before I could question it, she produced a small box, revealing 2 gleaming rings. "Ding Yu," her voice wavered. "I know I've broken promises, but you have to understand, Xiaoji's health is poor, and with his parents so far away, he only has me here. I can't abandon him." She took a steadying breath. "You're just hung up on marriage, right? We can wear these rings. We're only missing the certificate. There's no real difference, right?" That last question held a hint of fear, as if she sensed my answer might not be what she expected. I studied her face, noting the confident set of her jaw beneath the anxiety. She truly believed I would agree. Why wouldn't I? After 7 years of pathetic devotion, wasn't I easy to appease? Wasn't this crumb of commitment enough for someone like me? But a marriage certificate wasn't the issue. What I craved was fair treatment, a love undivided, a partner who belonged fully to me, not just in the spaces left by another man. The words of ending rose in my throat, just as her expectant smile began to fade. Then her phone rang, that special ringtone I'd grown to hate. Her face transformed instantly with worry, and I didn't need to guess who could cause such concern. Only Yang Xiaoji held that power. His voice crackled through the speaker, and the moment shattered. "I feel awful. Qinshui, am I dying?" Yang Xiaoji's voice trembled through the speaker. In an instant, Su Qinshui transformed. Tableware clattered as she jumped up, keys already in hand, rushing for the door. She didn't spare me a single glance. The scene felt like a rerun of yesterday, another date interrupted by his perfectly timed crisis. 10 times we'd attempted to get our marriage license. 10 times she'd abandoned me to run to Yang Xiaoji. Yesterday's confrontation echoed in my mind. If his illness never improves, will you never marry me? What am I to you? Her fury had been immediate, explosive. "I promised to care for him for life. Can't you stop being so selfish? We've been together 7 years. What difference does a marriage certificate make?" "Get out. Don't make me say it twice." 7 years. She knew exactly how many nights I'd spent crying into my pillow, hating her, hating my weakness, wanting to let go but unable to break free. "Sir, would you still like the food served?" The server's gentle inquiry yanked me back to reality. Around me, diners watched with a mix of sympathy and relief that they weren't in my shoes. I nodded mechanically, forcing down food that might as well have been sawdust. Chapter 5. Halfway to the hospital, Su Qinshui's guilt apparently caught up with her. Her message appeared. "Ding Yu, Xiaoji is sick. I'll take him to the hospital and come back to you. He's a patient. Don't hold it against him. I only love you." The words were so familiar they'd lost all meaning. Yes, he was sick, but I owed him nothing. And his mysterious illness? A masterpiece of timing. I'd done my research, asked around about Yang Xiaoji's condition. Congenital heart disease, well managed since childhood. With proper surgery, these daily attacks shouldn't happen. But the most remarkable thing was their impeccable timing. My birthday, our anniversary, our marriage registration days. What kind of illness struck with such theatrical precision? Or was he orchestrating these performances? I ignored her messages and started photographing the restaurant's scenery instead. It truly was beautiful. Elegant pavilions, serene courtyards, mountains reflected in still waters, birds skimming across fish ponds. Love permeated every corner, recording countless romance stories. I posted the photos with a caption. Perhaps others' happiness is also a kind of happiness. Within seconds, Yang Xiaoji countered with his own post. You always come faster than illness. The photos showed him and Su Qinshui in intimate poses, his head on her shoulder, their fingers intertwined. This was how real couples looked. This was what I'd never had. I gripped my phone until my knuckles whitened, then forced myself to sit back down. Since they were already at the hospital, Su Qinshui should return soon. I'd wanted to end things properly, to leave each other with at least one untainted memory. But I'd overestimated my importance in her world. The restaurant staff were stacking chairs when I finally accepted she wasn't coming back. My messages went unanswered, lost in whatever drama was unfolding at the hospital. The night air turned cruel, a light drizzle starting as if to mock me. I made no attempt to seek shelter, letting the rain soak through my clothes as I walked home. Each step felt heavy with 7 years of memories, each droplet another reminder of my foolishness. By the time I reached home, fever burned beneath my skin, my throat raw. Su Qinshui's absence wasn't surprising anymore. It was the natural state of things. I collapsed into bed, still in my damp clothes. She finally remembered my existence the next morning, bursting in with her face painted in practiced remorse. Xiaoji's condition was serious. I couldn't get away. But I brought you breakfast. Come eat? I turned away, gathering my work documents with trembling hands. The fever had left me weak, in no condition for another round of excuses. But Su Qinshui grabbed my arm, her persistence suddenly suffocating. Why is your hand so hot? Before she could finish fussing, I yanked away, a last attempt at preserving my dignity. The sudden movement scattered my documents across the floor. As she helped gather them, her eyes caught on the letterhead. These are overseas business documents. What are you? Seeing the hurt in her eyes, something dark and satisfied unfurled in my chest. As you can see, I'm being transferred abroad. Su Qinshui, let's break up. You're free now. There won't be anyone stopping you from being with your Xiaojie anymore. Chapter 6. The words lifted a weight I'd carried for years. This was our cleanest ending, each of us walking away, free to pursue our separate paths. I would chase my ambitions, and she could have her great romance. I don't agree. You can't leave me. For the first time, she seemed genuinely shaken by something concerning me. But the satisfaction I'd expected didn't come. The false sweetness of our relationship had lodged in my throat like hard candy. Better to spit it out than choke. You don't need to agree, Su Qinshui. Let's end this amicably. After all these years, I'd rather not make things ugly. She clutched at my hand, searching for the ring she'd presented as our mock wedding band. But like her, I'd been too busy. The belated gift lay forgotten, another symbol of our mismatched priorities. Tears spilled down her cheeks, falling warm against my skin. Ding you, please don't go. I can't live without you. If you really want to get married, we can get our license tomorrow. I promise, no matter what happens, I won't leave this time, okay? She watched my face with desperate attention, the same look I'd given her countless times, begging for a moment's consideration. I recognized it now, the expression of a stray dog, hoping for scraps of affection. I withdrew my hand as if her touch burned, each inch of distance between us carrying the weight of 7 years. The morning light filtering through our apartment windows felt harsh, unforgiving, just like truth. I don't love you anymore, I said, the words falling like stones in the quiet room. Everyone talks about the 7-year itch, but 7 years is enough time to watch passion turn to ash. Su Qinshui crumpled before me, her designer dress wrinkled at the knees as she knelt. I'd never seen her like this, her carefully maintained facade of sophistication shattered, mascara tracking down her cheeks. But I love you, Ting, she sobbed, reaching for me again. I know I was wrong. I was blind to your feelings. Please, we can go get our marriage license right now. Don't leave me. Something twisted in my chest at the sight of her vulnerability. For 7 years, I'd known only her pride, her haughty smiles, her casual dismissals. This broken woman before me was a stranger. My traitorous heart softened for a moment before I caught myself, exhaling a weary sigh that seemed to carry all our wasted years. True regret always comes too late, I said, more to myself than her. A cracked mirror will always show a distorted reflection. That's us now. No amount of gold can fill these fractures. I moved toward the door, my footsteps echoing in our marble foyer. I'm leaving for abroad soon. Pack your things. I'll pack mine. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. The sound of her muffled sobs followed me out, but I didn't look back. Her belated love was like winter flowers blooming in spring, beautiful perhaps, but fundamentally wrong in their timing. The next few days passed in a blur of purposeful avoidance. Early mornings and late nights at the office, carefully choreographed absences. The peace was deceptive, and I should have known better than to trust it. Su Chinches had never accepted defeat gracefully. 3 days later, she ambushed me with a smile that was both familiar and foreign. "Ting Yu, let me drive you to work?" The offer hung between us, weighted with memory. The car was technically mine, making refusal seem petty. I agreed with a silent nod, following her like a shadow of my former self. She was electric that morning, full of forced cheer, chasing stray cats, pointing out cherry blossoms, recreating our early dating rituals with desperate precision. I pressed my fingers to my temples, a headache building. "Stop this performance," I said quietly. "We can't uncrack what's broken." The artifice crumbled. Her body shook as she gripped the steering wheel, tears splashing onto her expensive silk blouse. "What am I supposed to do? Ting Yu, how can you just stop loving me? What am I supposed to do?" The question echoed in the car's confined space, a haunting refrain I knew too well. For 7 years, I'd asked myself the same thing, lying awake in our cold bed. If you don't love me, what am I supposed to do? "There's no answer, Su Chinches," I said finally. "You built this maze. Now you have to live in it." She wiped her face with mechanical precision, the gesture so familiar it ached. In silence, she drove me to the company, her perfect posture a last attempt at dignity. I watched her hands on the wheel, remembering when they used to tremble at my touch, and felt nothing but tired. The light seemed to drain from her face, leaving her wilted like a flower touched by frost. I watched her deflate with clinical detachment. These displays no longer moved me. At the company entrance, she lingered, her hopeful eyes fixed on me. "Can I pick you up this afternoon?" The question carried the careful hesitation of someone who finally understood they were no longer loved. I nodded, not out of kindness, but exhaustion. These were our final days. We might as well keep the peace, if only to honor what we once had. Su Chinshui's smile bloomed, as beautiful as ever, but it stirred nothing in my heart. My supervisor watched this exchange from the lobby, anxiety creasing his forehead. Throughout the day, he circled my desk like a concerned parent, probing delicately about my resolve. I met his worry with a calm smile. "I won't change my mind," I assured him. "Leaving is the right choice, for both of us. If she can't make decisions, I'll make them for her." He nodded, understanding finally settling in his eyes. The day was unexpectedly lovely, sunlight streaming through the office windows. There was a peculiar lightness in my chest, the weightlessness of no longer carrying someone else's happiness. Freedom, I realized, tastes like this. When afternoon came, Su Chinshui appeared like a ghost of better days, her face pinched with worry. She'd been bombarding my phone with messages all day, each one left unread, unanswered. Her courage in showing up despite my silence spoke volumes. I slipped into the passenger seat without a word, but my eyes caught the reflection of flowers in the rearview mirror. Not roses this time, but friezes. I searched through your social media, she said softly. I learned they're your favorite. I should have known this before. I should have paid attention. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Don't, I cut her off. The past is the past. Save your apologies. I couldn't bear to look at the flowers. They represented everything I once yearned for but now felt hollow. Su Qinshui kept stealing glances at me, words clearly burning on her tongue, but I maintained my silence. If this was the end, let it be clean. I no longer needed to cushion her feelings. The car veered off our usual route home, pulling into a familiar plaza. My heart betrayed me with a stumble, muscle memory refusing to forget. Su Qinshui reached into her pocket, producing a single piece of candy. The gesture transported me back to that bitter day with the little girl, the taste of disappointment still sharp on my tongue. I know you've stopped loving me, she whispered, holding out the candy like an offering. But I can't let go. Can we start over? I'll be different this time. Please, just one more chance? Her voice carried the same gravity as a marriage proposal, but all I could think of was how these same words once fell from my own lips when she repeatedly abandoned me for Yang Xiaoji. The irony wasn't lost on me. The bullet I'd taken years ago had finally found its way back to her. But this time, I was the one holding the power to wound or heal. Couldn't we hire a professional caregiver? I had suggested, my voice carefully measured. Someone who could watch over him during his episodes. It would be safer, and you'd have time for us. The words had barely left my mouth before Su Qinshui's face contorted with rage. Have you no heart? She had spat, each word a dagger. You know Xiaoji fears strangers. He's already so vulnerable, and you want to parade his weakness before unfamiliar eyes? How dare you be so cruel? Her voice had risen to that familiar pitch of righteous anger. If this is all you have to say, we needn't continue this discussion. Chapter 8. The bitter irony sat heavy on my tongue. Wasn't she also once a stranger to Xiaoji? But I had swallowed those words, pride keeping my silence. Now, watching her face drain of color as her own cruel words echoed back at her, I felt a hollow satisfaction. The candy slipped from her trembling fingers, cracking in two on the pavement, a fitting metaphor for us. Perfect, I thought, watching the broken pieces. If only our first meeting had ended this way, I might have been spared years of heartache. People streamed around us in the plaza, life continuing its relentless forward motion. I turned toward home without a backward glance, leaving her frozen in place like a discarded statue. The apartment surprised me with its pristine state, surfaces gleaming, everything in perfect order. This wasn't Su Qinshui's usual style. Her attempts at housework typically created more chaos than cleanliness. She was trying to change, I realized. Good. Adults should learn self-sufficiency, even if the lessons come too late. When I woke from my nap, she had materialized in our living room, clearly waiting. Her eyes were raw and swollen from what must have been hours of crying. Do you need something? I asked, maintaining the polite distance of acquaintances. Have we really become such strangers? She whispered, her voice cracking. I simply tilted my head, waiting. Will you come somewhere with me? She finally managed. Consider it a farewell gesture. After a long moment, I nodded, the weight of 7 years pressing down on that simple movement. The next day, my last before departure, Su Qinshui led me to the temple where our story had begun. Here, I had once confessed my love, burning incense and begging Buddha to bind our fates together forever. The irony of returning to end what began here wasn't lost on me. Buddha, it seemed, had other plans for us. Su Qinshui, oblivious to my bitter musings, shouldered her backpack with determined eyes. Let's climb, she said, facing the endless stone stairs that Buddha had seemingly designed to test devotion. Years ago, I'd spent hours convincing her to make this climb, promising to carry her if she tired. Now, at our end, she was the one leading the way. I followed without protest. I'd always enjoyed exercise, the cleansing feeling of sweat and exertion. At the first rest pavilion, with its small incense burner, Su Qinshui reverently lit several sticks, placing them with trembling hands. I stood back, unmoved. This time, I had no wishes to offer Buddha. I'd learned the hard way that destiny rests not in divine hands, but in our own choices. After her prayers, Su Qinshui rummaged through her bag, producing a water bottle with practiced care. "I brought glucose and saline solution too," she said, her voice threaded with concern. "Did you eat? I packed all your favorites." I watched as she pulled out items I used to buy regularly, each one a calculated reminder of what she'd failed to notice for years. A bitter smile touched my lips. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her sudden attentiveness felt like a cruel joke. After all, she'd shown such devoted care for Yang Zhaoji all these years. She'd always known how to nurture, just never chose to nurture me. Now, facing loss, she wielded that care like a weapon of guilt. I accepted the water wordlessly, watching shadows dance across her face at my silence. The path ahead stretched smoother, but Su Qinshui turned each step into a pilgrimage. At every incense burner, she bowed with dramatic devotion, her prayers unknown but desperate. I stood back, refusing to steady her swaying form. Even compassion has its limits. At the temple's main gate, she pulled a key from her bag. Not just any key, but the key. Memory stirred like an old wound. Years ago, too poor to buy proper flowers for my confession, I'd offered my savings and my house key instead. "If you accept," I'd said then, "you'll be the only mistress of our home." She'd laughed, calling me foolish. Who confesses with a key? But there, before the ancient deities, I'd sworn to protect her forever. Now that same key glinted in the temple light as she pulled me toward the wish ribbon hall. Her fingers trembled as she searched through countless red strings, desperate to find the one bearing our names. But each wave of visitors had brought new wishes, new promises, burying ours beneath years of others' dreams. "Nothing," she whispered, then louder. "Nothing. Why isn't there anything left?" She collapsed to her knees, clutching the key like a lifeline. "You promised forever, Tingyu. You said that." Her voice cracked. "I haven't spoken to Yang Xiaojia in weeks. I'll do what you asked. We'll find him a caregiver. He won't intrude anymore." Each stone step beneath us held a memory, but they were mostly memories of pain, her hysteria, her accusations, her absence. "We can go abroad together," she pleaded. "Just us. If you need more proof, I'll block his number right now. Watch me do it." As she frantically fumbled with her phone, a pale figure materialized behind her, breathing heavily from the climb. Yang Xiaoji's voice came soft and broken. "Do you hate me so much that you'd erase me completely?" Su Qinshui froze, her phone slipping from trembling fingers. Yang Xiaoji stood there, his chest heaving from the climb, his face pale and drawn. "Why did you come?" The words spilled from her lips, concern momentarily overriding everything else. "You know you shouldn't overexert yourself." The temple bells rang, their bronze notes piercing through the tension. 7 years of love, sacrifice, and unresolved emotions coalesced in this moment. I watched them both, the woman caught between choices, and the man she couldn't seem to let go. "I've already told you," I said quietly, my voice steady against the chaos swirling around us. "I don't love you anymore." Sometimes endings don't arrive with explosions, but with the quiet finality of temple bells fading into the mist. "We're just friends," Su Qinshui insisted, her voice edged with desperation. "Tingyu is the only one I've ever truly loved." Her words struck Yang Xiaoji like a physical blow, leaving him unsteady as tears shimmered in his eyes. "You're breaking your promise?" His voice cracked with anguish. "After everything we've been through? If you don't care about me anymore, why act like you do? Why worry about my health?" His breathing turned ragged, his tone heavy with drama. Maybe it would be better if I just disappeared. Then I'd be out of your way, and you could both be free. Yang Xiaoji clutched his chest, the familiar gesture of someone wielding their frailty like a shield. But this time, Su Qinshui didn't rush to his side. Instead, a look of exhaustion and something sharper crossed her face, a mask slipping after years of wear. "Your illness isn't anyone else's responsibility," she said, her voice cold and firm. "If you insist on wallowing in misery, that's on you. I owe you nothing. Let's be honest, if you really wanted to let go, you would have done it by now." The sharp truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Yang Xiaoji faltered, his practiced script unraveling in front of him. Love, I realized, is like mountain mist, capable of obscuring everything. But when it clears, it reveals the harsh truths hidden beneath. Su Qinshui turned to me, her eyes wide with panic. "Ting Yu, I swear I didn't call him here. This is our place. I would never bring anyone else." Her gaze bore into mine, pleading and desperate. Once, I had longed for this moment, for her to finally choose me, to put us first. But timing is everything, and ours had long since passed. I turned away, ready to leave, but Yang Xiaoji reached for Su Qinshui again. "Qinshui, please, my heart. It's breaking. I can't live without you. Have you forgotten everything? We had a decade together. He's only had 7 years." The sound of her hand striking his face silenced everything. The slap echoed against the temple walls, sharp and final. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice trembling. "Don't you understand? This is over. You're suffocating me. Let me live my life and go live yours." I didn't stay to see what came next. My steps carried me down the mountain path, each one lighter than the last. The last time I had walked these steps, my mind had been consumed by thoughts of her, by dreams of a future that would never come to pass. Now, with every step, I released those dreams into the mist. A clean slate, a new beginning. Chapter 10. At home, I methodically checked my packed belongings, grabbed a quick dinner at the corner noodle shop, and fell into dreamless sleep. Tomorrow promised a new life, and anticipation hummed in my veins like electricity. Su Qinshui returned late, her footsteps heavy in the hallway. She lingered outside my door. I could hear her breathing, sense her hesitation, but neither of us broke the silence. Our final night passed with just a wooden door between us, a fitting metaphor for the barriers we'd built over 7 years. Morning brought the scent of cooking wafting under my door. When I finally emerged, Su Qinshui stood in the kitchen, her face carefully composed. "Eat before you go," she said softly. "There's still time." But time, I knew, had run out long ago. She wore the calm of someone watching a routine departure, as if I were leaving for a business trip rather than forever. I lifted my suitcase, shaking my head at the breakfast spread. 7 years of imagining this moment, and reality proved anticlimactic. My heart remained still, unmoved. Su Qinshui lifted the car keys from the table without protest. "Taxis are inconvenient," she said quietly. "The car is yours too. Let me give you one last ride. I'll clear out my things in a few days." I nodded, a fitting epilogue to our story. But at the airport, her composure cracked. Her fingers caught my sleeve, tears streaming down her face like summer rain. "Ting Yu, I understand now. I was wrong," she pleaded. "If you're worried about your career, I'll wait here. I love you. We can marry right now, this moment. Just please, don't leave me. Don't leave me." The phrase echoed in my chest. How many nights had I whispered those same words into empty rooms? Now Su Qinshui finally tasted that desperate pain, clinging to me like a drowning woman. I drew in a deep breath, tasting airport coffee and regret. If you had looked back just once during these 7 years, I thought, if your eyes had shifted from Yang Xiaoji to me for even a moment, We might have avoided this ending, but love, once extinguished, leaves only ashes. Su Qin Shui, I said gently, our story is finished. Let it go. Qin Shui, he doesn't want you anymore. He doesn't love you. Two voices spoke in unison, mine and Yang Xiaoji's. As her grip was pulled away, relief washed over me. I turned toward the security gate. Don't abandon me, Ting Yu. Her cries pierced the airport's morning bustle. Hit me, hate me, but don't leave. Travelers turned to stare, but I kept walking, matching her present pain with the memory of 11 abandonments. Stop calling! Yang Zhaojia's voice carried over the crowd. He's chosen his future. He doesn't love you. Only I do. Come back to me. We'll be like before, dining together, traveling together. His words painted their future in watercolor strokes, a perfect picture for Su Qin Shui. But she thrashed in his arms like a wild thing, kicking, hitting, finally sinking her teeth into his flesh when he wouldn't release her. I bought a ticket, she sobbed. If Ting Yu just said one kind word, I'd follow him anywhere. Why are you stopping me? I hate you. I'll never forgive you. Her final gambit revealed, I felt only certainty. After years of entanglement, she and Yang Xiaoji were perfectly matched in their toxicity. I wouldn't turn back, wouldn't offer false kindness. In the end, I was just a chapter in her story, not the whole book. Chapter 11. 5 years dissolved like morning fog before I set foot on familiar soil again. My parents had grown silver-haired in my absence, their calls increasingly urgent with talk of marriage. The company granted me 2 months' leave, time enough to ease their worries and face whatever ghosts still lingered here. My old apartment greeted me with unexpected cleanliness, as if someone had been maintaining it in my absence. Before I could dwell on that mystery, my parents called from the train station, their voices crackling with excitement. I chose a taxi over driving, giving myself time to prepare for the reunion. 5 years of video calls hadn't prepared me for seeing them in person. Age had carved new lines in their faces, painted silver through their hair. Watching them navigate the crowded station, I felt time's weight pressing on my shoulders. Perhaps it was time to settle down, give them the stability they craved. But as I contemplated letting my mother arrange matchmaking sessions, fate played its hand. Zheng Peiyu appeared at our door, uninvited and radiant with success, a young CEO with a fortune behind her name. My mother fell instantly in love with her, even removing the jade bracelet she'd saved for her future daughter-in-law. The gesture wasn't subtle. After dinner, I pulled Zheng Peiyu into the hallway. This is deception, I whispered urgently. You need to leave. For 5 years, she'd pursued me with relentless determination, but my heart remained locked in its past, too scarred to trust easily. Auntie, she called out dramatically, your son is trying to send me away. I clapped a hand over her mouth, dreading my mother's intervention. We reached a compromise, 1 week maximum, with a promise I'd personally escort her out if she overstayed. Zheng Peiyu accepted with a victorious smile, but she didn't need a week. In 3 days, she'd transformed my sterile apartment into a space vibrating with life, her books scattered purposefully, her coffee mug claiming territory on my desk, her laughter echoing off walls that had forgotten such sounds. Despite myself, I felt joy stirring in long-dormant places. My parents beamed with approval. Yu is such a treasure, they'd say. So thoughtful, so well-mannered. Their praise flowed like warm honey until the door opened, and Su Qin Shui stepped into our reconstructed world. She froze, her eyes fixed on where Zheng Peiyu's fingers intertwined with mine. The moment stretched, brittle as frost. Oh, you must be Sister Qin Shui. Zheng Peiyu bounced forward, radiating warmth. Ting Yu's told me about you. Thank you for bringing him into my life. Each word landed like shrapnel, though Zheng Peiyu meant no harm. The shopping bags in Su Qin Shui's hands crashed to the floor, their contents spilling like secrets. She scrambled to gather them, desperate for escape, but Zhong Peiyu, ever friendly, ever oblivious, followed her, peppering her with questions about my past. From my doorway, I listened to their fading voices, finally understanding why Zhong Peiyu's presence felt so familiar. She'd been unconsciously recreating the home Su Qinshui and I once shared, but filling it with the warmth that had always been missing. The truth settled like dust. Su Qinshui lived next door, and with the key I'd never reclaimed, she'd been the ghost keeping my home alive. I felt nothing at this revelation. Expired sweetness, no matter how carefully preserved, remains expired. When Zhong Peiyu returned from her chat with Su Qinshui, sorrow had replaced her usual brightness. She resisted my questions until finally collapsing against my chest, tears soaking my shirt. "You're too good," she sobbed. "The way she treated you, it breaks my heart." Her words penetrated layers of scar tissue I thought had hardened completely. Without thinking, my arms enclosed her, not out of habit or obligation, but genuine comfort. From the corner of my eye, I caught my parents exchanging knowing smiles. "You hugged me!" Zhong Peiyu's head snapped up, tears forgotten. She gripped my hands with fierce determination. "A hug means you like me. You have to take responsibility now." Her voice carried both playfulness and genuine anxiety, like a child afraid their wish might be taken back. I smoothed her hair gently. I murmured, the small sound carrying more meaning than any speech. "Wait!" Her eyes widened. Was that an? Did you actually say I nodded, drawing her closer. "You hurt for my past," I whispered. "Let me care for your present." The door wasn't fully closed. It never was in this apartment of memories, and I knew Su Qinshui stood in the hallway. Her shadow stretched thin and solitary against the wall, a reminder of what once was. But my thoughts had already shifted to the woman in my arms, wondering what to cook for her discriminating palate. Sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it's as simple as an and thoughts about dinner preferences. The past may leave shadows, but the present demands to be lived. One meal, one embrace, one moment at a time.